Yuji can win every fight in the Culling Games, but every time he does, something else slips through, and the faster he wins, the worse it gets, because in this version, Yuji isn't fighting the players, he's fighting the clock, and that's a battle he can't brute force, and you see it immediately. Yuji doesn't struggle in this colony, he clears it fast. Most players don't even get the chance to react, and fights end before they really begin. For a moment, it looks like the Culling Games are already falling apart, but that's exactly the problem, because every second Yuji spends here is a second he's not somewhere else. Yuji enters Tokyo Colony 1 with a single focused objective: find Higuruma, take his 100 points, and save Tsumiki. A simple goal, with terrible constraints. The moment the barrier closes around him, the game begins. Two players take to the sky, the same couple from the original timeline, confident in their advantage. Yuji doesn't slow down, he doesn't wait, he moves. Using the building beneath him as leverage, he launches himself upward, hard enough to crack the foundation. He catches one of them midair, cuts off their momentum, and drives them into the street. The impact shatters the ground, and just like that, the fight is already over. And this is where everything shifts. It's an instant, brutal victory. Yuji ends the fight before it even begins. But here's the problem. His overwhelming strength backfires immediately. The colony doesn't rush him. They panic. Because of this, his cursed energy and physical dominance are so obvious that every fodder player knows they're facing an apex predator. And that's where things change. They don't test him. They don't approach. They disappear. So instead, by showing he's a monster right away, Yuji turns Tokyo Colony 1 into a giant game of hide-and-seek. He's forced to waste precious time kicking down doors and tracking people through a dead city, until eventually the noise leads him exactly where he needs to be: a theater, and inside is Higuruma. Now physically, this isn't even a fight. Yuji could shatter Higuruma's ribs before the lawyer even registered the movement, but Higuruma is a genius, and the moment he recognizes the threat standing in front of him, he opens his domain, deadly sentencing, immediately. And this is where Yuji's endgame stats stop mattering, because inside the domain, violence is completely forbidden. Yuji has the strength to level a city block, but he can't throw a single punch. To get the points, he has to play the game. He has to sit through the trial. And because this is Modulo Yuji, the trial goes very differently. This is a Yuji who already understands the weight of his soul and has fully accepted his role as a cog in the machine. So when Judgment accuses him of the massacre in Shibuya, Yuji doesn't collapse under the guilt. He argues his case. And that forces Higuruma into a debate about morality, guilt, and the laws of jujutsu society itself. Yuji explains Sukuna's possession, the stakes of the Culling Games, and what Kenjaku is planning. He shows Higuruma that while his hands are stained with blood, his resolve is still completely genuine. And slowly, Higuruma starts to understand him. Not just the facts, but the sincerity behind them. The domain falls, the charges are dismissed, and in the end, Higuruma agrees to hand over his points. While Yuji was trapped in court, the rest of the colony wasn't standing still. We don't need to focus on Reggie Star's group trying to fight Yuji, because Reggie was never hunting Yuji, he was hunting Megumi. And without Yuji there to serve as the vanguard, Megumi is pushed to the absolute brink. He's forced to rely on his incomplete Chimera Shadow Garden, dragging himself through a desperate battle of attrition against Reggie's receipts and tactics. So by the time Yuji and Higuruma finally navigate the colony and reach Megumi's location, the fight is already over. Megumi survives, but barely. He's battered, bleeding heavily from the head, and barely conscious against the wall beside him. And hovering above them is Hana Kurusu, the host of Angel. Yuji runs forward, relief finally washing over him. He made it. He has the points. He found Angel, and Megumi is still alive. And for the first time in a long while, it feels like they can finally fix this nightmare. Then a single word echoes through the darkest corner of his mind: "Enchain." And in that instant, everything falls apart. Yuji has mastered his soul. His punches can warp reality. He has more power than almost anyone alive, and none of it matters, because no amount of strength can break a binding vow. For exactly 1 minute, Yuji loses control of his body completely. The world tilts beneath him as he's violently pushed into the passenger seat of his own mind, fully conscious but unable to move. And from somewhere deep inside himself, Yuji watches Sukuna smile through his own face. Hana is struck down before she can react. Yuji's hand grips his own finger and tears it clean from the bone. And the worst part is that Megumi never had a chance. Because Yuji is so overwhelmingly strong, Sukuna closes the distance almost instantly. Yuji screams helplessly from inside his own mind as the blood-soaked finger is forced down Megumi's throat. And just like that, the transfer is complete. Sukuna abandons Yuji completely and takes Megumi's body for himself. And the worst part is, this only happens because Yuji was late. If the trial hadn't delayed him, and if the colony hadn't scattered into hiding, Megumi never reaches this point, and Sukuna never gets the opening he was waiting for. The 1 minute expires. Modulo Yuji wakes up gasping for air in an empty alleyway. He is stronger than he has ever been in his entire life, but his best friend is gone, hijacked by the King of Curses right in front of his eyes. And from this moment forward, everything changes. The Culling Games stop being about points. Now it's a manhunt. With Sukuna disappearing into the night to fully submerge Megumi's soul, Yuji realizes the board has completely changed. The Culling Games barely matter anymore. Grinding points in random colonies is useless now. Sendai can wait. Yuta is more than capable of handling the monsters there on his own. So instead, Yuji narrows his focus down to 2 objectives: find Kenjaku and unseal Gojo. Leaving the remaining players behind, Yuji regroups with Maki Zenin, and together they head beneath the colonies toward the tomb of the Star Plasma Vessel, the source of the entire disaster. And by the time they arrive, the fight has already started. In the original timeline, Kenjaku fought Yuki and Choso in a brutal battle that pushed all 3 fighters to their limit. But this timeline is different because halfway through the fight, Modulo Yuji crashes straight through the ceiling, and the entire dynamic changes instantly. Kenjaku survives through preparation, matchups, and 1,000-year-old knowledge. Yuji is the exact opposite, pure aggression and unpredictability. And the moment he joins Yuki and Choso, the fight completely falls apart for Kenjaku. Kenjaku floods the battlefield with special-grade cursed spirits, hoping to overwhelm the trio through sheer numbers. Yuji doesn't hesitate. He steps forward and unleashes his awakened shrine. Invisible slashes carve through the cavern, shredding cursed spirits apart before they can fully materialize. But the real problem isn't shrine, it's Yuji himself. Because every time Yuji closes the distance and lands a reinforced punch, Kenjaku feels something far worse than physical damage. Yuji isn't just hitting his body, he's striking the boundary between Kenjaku's soul and Geto's corpse. And with every impact, Kenjaku's control starts to slip. His cursed energy stutters, and even his movements begin to glitch. And for the first time in over 1,000 years, Kenjaku realizes something horrifying. Normal reverse cursed technique can't properly heal soul damage. That's when panic finally sets in. Because if Yuji lands a black flash, this fight doesn't just end in defeat. Kenjaku could be ripped out of Geto's body completely, and suddenly, the mastermind behind the entire Culling Games is no longer fighting to win, he's fighting to survive. Realizing he's completely overwhelmed, Kenjaku is forced into a desperate retreat. Yuki's mass, Choso's pressure, and Yuji's soul-shaking strikes leave him with no way to regain control of the fight. Gravity erupts through the cavern as he collapses the underground chamber just to buy himself a few seconds to escape. And for the first time since the Culling Games began, Kenjaku abandons his own plans out of fear. Quick shout out to Salma for subscribing. If you want to be next, subscribe and comment, "I subbed." Alright, let's continue. Because Kenjaku is forced to flee the battlefield early, the heroes recover the back of the prison realm without suffering the catastrophic losses they did in the original timeline. Yuki and Choso both survive, and with Hana Kurusu finally awake, the final piece falls into place. Jacob's ladder tears open the sky, and the seal around the prison realm finally breaks apart. Gojo is unsealed. He emerges above the battlefield, staring down at a world that's completely fallen apart. The Culling Games are spiraling out of control. Entire colonies are in chaos, and Megumi is gone, possessed by a fully realized Sukuna. But then Gojo looks down and locks eyes with Yuji, and with the 6 eyes, Gojo understands everything almost instantly. He sees the density of Yuji's cursed energy, the scars carved into his body, the mastery of the soul, and the traces of Sukuna's technique now embedded into Yuji's flesh. This isn't the same boy Gojo left behind in Shibuya. This is a hardened jujutsu sorcerer who survived impossible odds while the strongest sorcerer alive was sealed away. And for a moment, Gojo gives him a single solemn nod, not just as a teacher, but as someone finally recognizing Yuji as an equal on the battlefield. And from that point forward, the Culling Games completely derail. The rules stop mattering. The colonies stop mattering. Even the pacing of Kenjaku's grand plan starts to collapse, because Yuji's overwhelming strength didn't create a perfect ending, but it shattered the villain's control over the board. Megumi is still gone. The binding vow still succeeded, and Sukuna is stronger than ever. But now, the heavy hitters are still alive. Gojo is back. And for the first time since Shibuya, Yuji finally has the strongest sorcerers in the world standing beside him. So, instead of a desperate scramble for survival, the story shifts into something far more dangerous. A coordinated hunt. Gojo is back. Yuta is still in the fight. Yuki survived. And together, they prepare to hunt Sukuna, tear Kenjaku apart, and drag Megumi back from the darkness by force. Modulo Yuji couldn't stop every tragedy, but he changed the pace of the war enough to stop the world from collapsing completely. And honestly, this might not even be Yuji's most dangerous timeline, because what happens when Yuji enters the story already knowing the future? Click this video to find out.